most people in my life anyway, are starting to shift from a lower self, I think worldwide, to a higher self. There's a conscious shift upon us. It's happening. We're shifting out of that lower limited perspective into a more expanded perspective. So most of us identify at the lower self at this stage still, thoughts, feelings and emotions, operating through your limited beliefs, the small I, you could say, the personality construct. And then we're shifting into the higher self, the big I, your soul, that soul self. And some of you may have had these experiences of shifting into a higher awareness. And that's what you're most likely shifting into, that higher self aspect. And to the lower self, that feels huge. It feels like God. It feels like you're a God. But really, you're just shifting into that God self, that soul, your soul self. It's the big I. It's not the little I, it's not the little person, it's the big I, it's the soul. And instead of operating from thoughts, feelings and emotions, you start operating, once you've anchored into the higher self, from knowing, sensations and perceptions. So it's no more thoughts, it's knowings. It's no more feelings, it's sensations. It's no more emotions, it's perceptions. Not to say that it's no more, but you're not locked into it like you once was. And this is only if you've anchored into your higher self. So if you haven't, you're most likely going up and down, up and down, up and down. And I think a lot of spiritual people do this. 1 minute they're great, 1 minute they're not. They're in their lower self, higher self, lower self, higher self. And people that shift into the higher self, that's not the end, remember there's a trinity. And there's actually 4 states, more than 3 states. But, firstly, from the lower self perspective, from the human self, you have to do the self-work, healing yourself of your traumas, however you choose to do that. But really looking inward, doing that self-work. There's many practices and healings, but basically just be fucking honest with yourself and go there and ask those questions and replay those harsh memories and be honest and truthful and speak your truth. That's what really makes a difference to you, and that's what's really going to set you free. So once that healing work starts becoming completed, once that starts being done, once you start healing yourself on that lower level, you'll start to shift into a more loving part of yourself, a more loving sort of perspective. Still identified in the lower self, but you'll be operating more from love. And then once that happens, and once you start operating more from love, why is that? Because you've healed most of your trauma, so you become more of a loving being. You're not holding on to any pains or guilt or hurt or anything like that. You've forgiven, you've moved on. So once that's actually accomplished, and if you want to use the chakras as a bit of a guide, you're coming into, because once you start forgiving people and start forgiving situations and what are you operating? You're operating more from your heart, more heart space. You're less in your mind, you're less blaming, you're less in your head, you're more in your heart. So the heart chakra is the 4th chakra. And most of the traumas happen in the lower 3 chakras. The root chakra with all the sexual sort of traumas and things like that really happen there. Our will, the basic lower 3 chakras. If you don't know, go look it up, get a little map and have a look what the lower 3 chakras are. So, once you've actually done the healing, and that normally means whether you're aware of this or not, if you look at the chakra map, you will probably see a correlation of your traumas to each certain chakra. So normally it's the bottom 3 chakras that need healing, because then once you get to your heart, you start forgiving, you start loving, and that's what really starts expanding you. Because most people are only operating from the bottom 3 chakras and just touching their heart sometimes, but it's not completely open. So they're locked into that lower self perspective, that small I, that personality construct, still operating at the whim of their thoughts, feelings and emotions. And they're not really even in their higher self. They're just telling themselves a story, or they're just touching that space when they have a little meditation. They're like, ooh, wow, I feel expanded, and I'm getting these knowings and these downloads, and but you're not living in that space. So how to live there is just then once you've from that lower self, from that your normal human place, of your thinking mind, you start operating from your heart, from love. You will start to unify that duality within yourself of love and fear, because you've healed all that fear, or you're working on healing that fear, so then the heart can open a bit more. And that will help to bring you into coherence with your head, because you want that head-heart coherence. And once you get that, you'll start shifting into your higher self. But until then, you won't. So as you work your way through the chakras, or work your way through your emotions, and once you get to your heart, you'll find that there are probably lots of other memories and issues and traumas, or amazing experiences, or wonderful memories, and things from this life, and also other lives, past lives, people say, but really it's concurrent lives, because everything exists in the now. It's all unfolding now, because there is no time. Time is linear. There is no linear time. So when you start operating from your heart, once that starts happening, you're bridging that gap, so to speak, from the lower chakras to the higher chakras. And what are the higher chakras? Your throat, your third eye, and your crown. So throat is speaking your truth, because once you forgive and all that sort of stuff, then you start speaking your truth. Then you start talking about it. Once you do that, you start gaining a bit more insight. That's your third eye. And then through your crown, you can access higher knowledge. That's when you start accessing from the big eye, from the soul level. And as you start working your way up the chakras, working your way up in an awareness, by having these experiences, you can say you're sort of crossing that rainbow bridge, that chakra. It's like a chakra crossing. You're working through all your chakras. So the bottom three are normally this life, and the traumas that correlate to your lower three chakras. And then you work up to your heart, and then you work up to the top three. And the top three chakras will start leading into your higher self, will be higher self experiences. So there'll be experiences, there'll be memories that you don't know where they've come from, but other lives, dimensional traveling experiences, other worlds, other planets, other beings, all these things, they feel so real. And you know that it was you in this other avatar, or this other world, or this other time period. And you can start really healing yourself from this life in human form. You can start healing yourself in form through this life, and you can start healing all your other lives, and healing and changing the timelines of this current life, and and really doing a lot of the work here. This is what's amazing. Once you start crossing, or once you start doing that healing and really start anchoring into your higher self, it gets really fun. But you're not anchored yet, because you have to really go through all those chakras and cleanse it all and heal yourself completely to really then shift into your higher self. Once you're anchored into your higher self, things really start to get a bit fucking weird. Because it's a whole new perspective. Once you start shifting into your higher self, you're in the big eye, you're the soul. You're operating in knowing, sensations, and perceptions. And you can almost you're the witness. You become the witness, and you're sort of looking down in a way, not looking down in a negative way, but you've got just a different perspective, and you can see your lower self for what it is. You can see the personality, you can see the construct, you can see what it is made up of, you can see the veils, the conditionings. It's very obvious to you. And then experiences, it might be very dreamlike. You might get dizzy, you might have vertigo. There's lots of weird body sensations, body highs, ringing of the ears. I've had so many, and you have so many experiences once you start anchoring in, or once you start really touching the higher self levels and start living in that. And there's not a lot of, for me, a lot of self-work and self-healing work, like truth and honesty, and really going deep within myself and being honest with myself and healing myself. And this started from when I was a young child. I just didn't want to be weighed down by all my traumas. I chose to liberate myself, you know. There was always that seeking, that seeker of truth within me. I always questioned everything.